gambling with rejection when you've never gotten a job ever. So I managed to make it as a professional illustrator. I work full-time and I support my family of 4 with my income. I have had so many of you ask about my story, how I got here and how I made it like officially as an illustrator. So I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna tell my little story time. This is going to be a long format, rambling story. So, you know, grab something to drink or to draw and we're just gonna chat. This may end up being a 2-part video. It's up to my editor. And if it is, this first part will be from the beginning until I graduated college and got my first like real job as an artist, which was for Disney Interactive as a 2D artist in their game department. So let's start there. Since I was a little kid, I loved art, specifically coloring. I was the total like hundreds of coloring books that I would fill up and like velvet posters that I would color and put on my wall. And I really enjoyed that. And then when I was about 9 years old, I think my mom must have been talking to me about what I wanted to do when I was older. And I was coloring in my Lion King coloring book while watching The Lion King on VHS, to give you an idea of how old I am. And I remember thinking that there's like the scene where like Simba falls down and there's like stuff goes through the sky and the backgrounds were so beautiful. So I loved the way they painted it. And I thought I want to be able to do that. And then I kept coloring and watching the movie. And I was like, you know, I actually don't like coloring the backgrounds because I tried coloring behind the character I was coloring and I was like, that's actually not fun. But I would want to color characters. I love character. And so I went to my mom and I asked her if that was a job. And she was like, I don't know, but I know how you can find out. And she was able to get like the address of Disney, I guess. And she had me write them a letter. So I wrote them a letter and I misspelled my name. And I asked them I told them I was like 9 years old and I was interested in working for Disney and I wanted to know if there was a job that involved coloring in the characters. And to our surprise, I got a wonderful response back. It was literally like half an inch or a quarter inch thick of a response. The first page was personalized and then this last part of it looked like something that they give to all inquiries. So it was like how to build your portfolio and what schools to go to and what kind of jobs there are, etc., etc. And then the first page was to me specifically with my misspelled name. I think it was like Carly Festoon instead of Fenton. And they were basically like, coloring in the characters is not a real job. However, if you wanted to do that, you could become an animator because usually the animators color in their own animations. Now, this is back in the 90s or early 2000s, so that was still 2D animation was occurring. Things have changed now, so you'd have to write your own letter to Disney. She recommended that I learn how to draw from life and then I get a sketchbook and I draw lots of characters and people and then possibly go to an art college, which in that big pamphlet they had a bunch of recommendations. And so I pretty much just followed their advice, and luckily I had a really supportive family and really supportive parents, and they even let me get like how to draw people, like figure drawing books, and they were like naked and I was like covering up as I was like drawing. My mom let me buy it so I could practice. And they were able to find a high school that was a charter school that specialized in performing and fine arts. And so I ended up going there for high school. And during high school, I really got to spend a lot of time trying out different art mediums. So I got to do oil painting for the first time, or chalk pastel or acrylic. And I learned how to do like drawing still lifes and etching and just a lot of different types of medium of art. And I knew that I loved painting from that experience, which makes sense because it's a lot of color when you paint. And so I think for a while I was like, didn't really enjoy drawing, believe it or not. I really wanted to just paint. But all of my teachers were like, well,
in order to be a really good painter, you actually do need to learn how to draw.
Which I was really bummed about. But I was like, fine, I'll learn how to draw then. And so I spent a lot of time practicing drawing and doing that outside of school, I'm sure even. I don't really feel like during this time period of my life, during high school, that I really improved a lot as an artist. There is definitely some improvement. I definitely gained some technical skill, but it was obvious that to me, looking at that work, that I'm still very much a novice, like learning how to draw, doesn't really know fundamentals. But it did develop my love for art, and that I knew that I liked doing it enough that I spent, 4 years doing art in high school, and I still liked it and I still wanted to do it. So for me, that was what that experience really gave me. And then I had to look at going to college. And I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to go to college at all. And my parents, again, were very supportive, but I could tell my mom was worried about that. And I remember my dad sat me down and he was like, okay, well, if you don't go to college, what are you gonna do? Because he never went to college, so he couldn't really tell me no. And they were entrepreneurs, they own their own business. And I was like, I'll probably just do something like that. But I really thought about it and I was like, you know what, you're right. I actually think for me personally, the way that I learn and the way that I do well in like a study environment, like if I was going to become a professional, I'd have to spend a lot of time reading books on my own and learning on my own without that guidance or someone to talk to or a mentor. And I realized that I think that I would do better in school versus on my own. And I don't think that's true for everybody. And I know there's going to be people asking about whether or not they need to go to college for art school. It was the right choice for me. It's not the right choice for everybody. But for me, I knew that I needed the structure and that I wouldn't have made it without that. So I ended up deciding that I was going to go to college, but I looked at a lot of art schools and I didn't like the portfolios of the graduating students. So it was really tricky to find a school that I liked. And I think that's actually one of my biggest tips is if you're going to go to school for art, make sure you look at the portfolios of the students that have graduated and that you actually like what they're making, because that's what they're going to teach you to do. So if you don't like the portfolios that you're seeing, you shouldn't go to that school. And I think what it was is I didn't want to do fine art. I wanted to do more like classical illustration or animation. And so I ended up finding two schools that I was deciding between. One was the Savannah College of Art and Design, and the second one was San Jose State University. And the reason I chose San Jose State was because it was much cheaper. It was so much cheaper because it's not a private school. I really think I ended up spending, like, for all of my tuition, it was like the same as when I did end up working in the field, like 1/4 or 1 year of what they spent was what I spent for my entire education. So I'm glad that I went that way. I had to work while I was in school, and yeah, I would have been in massive debt. It would have been really hard. So I'm glad that I went this route. The reason that I went to San Jose State, like I said, is they had an animation illustration major, which not all schools have. And I looked at the portfolios of the graduating students and they were very good. And they were the kind of art that I wanted to make. And so that was really exciting. They still have a really good program as far as I know. The way that it works is you do your general education, and then you do some basic beginner art classes, and then you get accepted into the Bachelor's of Fine Arts major, and then you can do those advanced classes. So I got accepted into school, which is fine. I was always a really good student, so that was not a problem. And then I did the beginning classes, and then I tried to get accepted into the major, and I did not get accepted. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of kids and it's really competitive, so I'll just try again next year. I'm sure it won't be a problem. And then I didn't get accepted again.
Oh no!
And then panic began to set in. I think partially, especially because I had always been a really good student and I always got straight A's, suddenly not being good enough to even get accepted to learn was terrifying. And so I ended up going to one of the teachers and I showed them my portfolio and I was like, please give me a review. Like, what is it that I'm missing? What do I need to do? And they basically said that it was my figure drawing, my ability to draw people. And I don't know if it was, to be fair, I don't think it was my figure drawing, but I think just in general, I mean, obviously it was my figure drawing, but in general, what they're looking for was figure drawing. So I was like, okay, cool. That's what we're gonna be doing then. So I took every single figure drawing class that they offered there. And then I went to a college nearby and they had night classes, and they weren't even necessarily class, like you could just pay to join, where a model would come and you could draw. And so I would do that. And then I ended up doing like a summer boot camp with one of the teachers where it was like every single day for a month or two. And it was just figure drawing classes, and I did that. And then finally, when the next time came around, I got accepted into the program. It was very exciting. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't have gotten it on that third try. I feel like I would have given it one more go, but then probably realized that I just wasn't good enough. But we made it. We did a good job. Anyway, but I think from that experience, I think that was the first time as an artist where I was like really aware of how much I needed to improve my skill level. And I don't think I was ever thought that like I was like a hot shot or like the best in the class or anything, but I didn't think I was the worst in the class. And I didn't think I was so bad that I wouldn't get accepted. So I guess it kind of just put a little bit of that perspective there, and definitely a lot of fear. And I think that from that moment, a lot of the choices I made early on in college was based on that fear. Like I wanted the teachers to accept me and to like my work. And I was sort of constantly in those I was in art school for a long time. It was like a 4.5 to 5 year program, and I was there for 7 years. So like 5 years essentially, I was like, I don't have an opinion. I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me what to do. So then I got accepted to the program, and I was doing sort of like the beginner classes. And I feel like I always started off where I was towards the bottom of the class, not flunking out because I did the work. I knew that I would get a passing grade because I showed up and I did the work, and our teachers aren't that mean. But they would be like, you know, a low B, which is kind of like the meanest they would be, but that's where I would land. And then towards the end of the class, I would get up into like the B+, A- range. So I was like, had good transition in each of those classes of really learning and improving on my skill level through those classes. And we mostly focused in the beginning on fundamentals. So how to draw people, how to draw like value, color theory, perspective, and being able to draw realistically, which I don't do anymore, but I learned how to do it. So during this part of my education, I feel like the best lesson I think I learned at this point in my education was from one of my teachers who I had gone to for like office hours because I was struggling. And I think I had told him something that I've had a lot of people tell me as well, which is like, I am terrible at everything and I don't even know where to start. What should I do? And I really appreciated the advice that he gave me, which was to think of improving as an artist like you're peeling an onion. I feel like it's almost the reverse because it never stops. But essentially you're taking things one layer at a time, small steps. And so for example, he said to start off with the thing that you are the most terrible at. Like try and lay it out. What is the thing that you're most bad at? And if truly, this is just my opinion, if you're truly, everything's the same, you're just truly bad, similar amount at everything, then pick the thing that you want to learn the most and just start there, or the most simple thing to learn and start there. But basically it was like, find the thing that you're the worst at and improve that. And pretty soon that will no longer be the worst thing. So for example, if you have like color and value and character and you're trying to learn all these things, and I was worse at value, I did that first, and then eventually my value got pretty good, but now the color's worst thing, and so I'll work on that. And I think this is good because it taught me to sort of learn one thing at a time. So, because it's just too hard to try and learn every single thing all at the same time. So pick one thing, and that's the thing that you're improving on, and then see some gains and actually feel like you improved, and then work on the next thing. And also because it's a reminder that you're always going to come back to there, because like if you did each thing on the list, eventually you're going to end up at the beginning again. The value is going to be the thing that you're worst at, so you're going to have to work on that again, and just sort of in that circular cycle, improve what you're doing and how you're doing, which I think is nice because it's just a reminder of like, you don't have to be perfect, you'll always improve, and even something you're really good at, eventually you'll have to work on again. So I really took that advice to heart, and I feel like I was doing well. Like I said, so I started off low in the class and got to like the top students, and then I was like right below that, and I couldn't really crack into more of the top student. It just didn't matter how hard I tried, it felt like I just couldn't quite crack that. And so the point where I feel like that changed was when I had finally, it was truly because I had a horrible teacher. And he was so mean to everyone that I just didn't care what he thought about me. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get my B, and that's fine, I'll pass, and I no longer care what he thinks. I'm gonna draw what I like. And it was that moment where I was able to draw what I liked and not care about what other people thought that suddenly I started doing better. Oddly enough, he liked it more. Again, I wouldn't do it because I wanted him to like it more. I did it because it was what I liked. And I actually think this is the point where my style also started to come out, because it was what I liked and not what I thought it should be or what it technically was supposed to be. It was just what made me excited and made me happy. And so I think I was far enough along in my journey of like having done the fundamentals and learned the basics that I could start to listen to myself, and instead of others, for like sort of like the first time. And I feel like that's when I sort of blossomed to the point where I began to have truly just enough confidence as an artist to have a point of view and to have a style. And I don't know, that makes it sound like I'm confident. But you know, like I could have a point of view, whereas before I couldn't. I would go to a teacher and be like, is this good or not? Like if they'd asked me, I would have been like, I don't know, I think it's okay. But I could have a point of view and say, I like this, I don't like that. I love color for bright images, even if it's more colorful than real life. I like that. So I was able to sort of figure out what it is that I like and start showcasing that. That was towards the end of my school experience. It was like in the last year or so when I was getting ready to graduate. So it started to go to my head where whenever I got advice from teachers that I thought was dumb, I would do the opposite of it. For example, there was one day they're like, oh, all of your images need to be horizontal because that's what they want in the industry. You're not going to get hired if you don't do horizontal images. And so I did a vertical image, and and they had like rave reviews of it that day, and I was like, I'm gonna do what I want. Like literally, you give me this much power, and I will walk as far as I can. And so I think originally when I was in school, I had wanted to go into animation, and maybe I honestly, as looking back on it now, I don't know that I feel like this is as true, but when they talked about what your work life would be like at an animation studio and job security, it just sounded like I just didn't like the idea that I'd be working on one single project for multiple years, and then once that project ended, there's a good chance that they'll just lay everybody off, and then you'll be like out looking for a new job. And to be honest, that happened to me anyway. But I just didn't like the idea of working on one thing for so long. I think I just felt like I would get really burnt out, and I think that I felt like I would do better at a smaller sort of scale where I could do a lot of different things. Like I could do some character design, I could do some animation, I could do, whatever, and not get so pigeonholed as an artist. I was really worried about that. So I ended up deciding that instead of going to animation and film, I wanted to do games. And the area I was in, which was San Jose, was like a hot spot for games anyway. And there was a lot at that time period of like social games, like Facebook games and stuff, where there was like a more of like a cute style to them. And so I was like, oh, I think I could fit in well there. I was able to get like a freelance job as a contract artist for Gaia Online, creating like outfits for characters, like avatars. And I worked there for a number of years. That was my first like professional illustration experience, was creating avatars for Gaia Online and creating little like outfits and stuff like that. And it was a really fun way to start out that journey. So I was able to get my feet wet there and work professionally. And I remember I actually made my very last like 6 months of school so hard because like I said, I ended up taking 7 years because I just misplanned. Like it took me
a year and a half to get accepted. I started a half a year late, and then I didn't plan out my final classes on time. So when I was supposed to start the final program, which is a year, I was ready in the spring and you're supposed to be ready in the fall. So I had an extra like half a year.
So I'm like really done with school, and I have an illustration job, and I also am waitressing and going to school, and and I'm now at this point. I've been with dating my who's now my husband. We've been dating for quite a long time, and I think he said that I used to cry every day. I was like, it was once a week, and he's like, girl, I don't think so. And it was just because the schedule is crazy, and the other kids at school were like, oh, I stayed up all night working on this, and that means I'm so like,
I'm the top student because I spent all night and I never slept, and the only way you can get ahead in this class is if you never sleep and all you do is your art.
And I was super burnt out. And so I think it was a point in that I was like, I don't think I make better art past 2 a.m. I truly don't. Like after 2 a.m. I'm tired. And so I stopped doing that, and I'm in my final like 6 months of the program, and I have a small illustration gig, and I'm like making money as an illustrator, and really didn't want to be in that class, and I was like muscling through. And so that's when I started doing things like they gave me advice. I would be like completely ignore and do the opposite just because just to make my life interesting apparently. And I think I had told them that I got this job, and they were like not at all excited for me, and I was just like, I'm a working illustrator. I understand it's like a small gig, but like there's people who never even get to do that. Like anyways, so I finally graduate, and we have like a final portfolio, and I think that exact moment in time of when I graduated, like the moment you graduate and you're like, I'm no longer a student, but I also don't have a full-time job. So like I said, I was working part-time, but it's not a full-time job. It's not enough to support a family or myself. I was still having to like waitress and do that, or wherever I was working at the time. And that was the most terrifying part, I feel like, of like, am I going to make it? Because you're out in the real world, you're out in the real world now. And so I was applying to jobs, and I was able to get a interview where they do an art test for a game company, but they were a lot more like of a hardcore game with like, you know, monsters and like fighting and battles and like darker. And so so when I got that art test, they wanted a monster in a city fighting. No, they said they wanted, it just had to be a monster that I had to design, and a city, and it had to be at night with one human character. And I remember hearing my teachers in my head saying, you know, you want to make it in their style, like in the style of the company that you're applying to, which is honestly, it's good advice if that matches what you want to do. But on the other hand, I was hearing them say that your portfolio needs to be the art that you want to make, because otherwise you're going to get jobs doing stuff that you don't want to do. And I realized like I need to make the art that I want to make, because if I don't get this job, at least I'll have something for my portfolio. And I figured everyone who did this job was gonna turn in like a fighting monster destroying the city or something like that, And I wanted to do something different to stand out, and also something that felt more like me. And so I did like a monster on like a date with this girl, and she's like really pretty, and he's like a blobby, like 7-eyed monster, and he's like really like can't believe he's on this date with her. Walking across like the sidewalk at night, and I have never been turned down from a job faster. Like, it was like, I was like, hey, did you get it? They're like, yes. No, thank you. And if I really that was like my dream job, then I would have matched, you know, made it dark and like dangerous and like whatever. But obviously that wasn't the right job for me. But the piece that I made was something I could put in my portfolio. And so then shortly after that, in our like alumni emails, I got an email from one of the teachers who had heard about a job lead for Disney Interactive, and they were just opening up like a game studio in our area, and they were hiring for an animator. So now obviously I'm an illustrator. Most of the stuff that you've seen is illustration, but I did train in animation. It was animation, illustration, design major. So I had animation, and I had learned on my own outside of classes how to use like Flash animation and stuff like that. So I was like, I have some animation skill, but I am more of an illustrator. And so I wrote them because still though it was my dream job, it was Disney. And I wrote an email to them and I said, hey, I heard you're looking for an animator. I can do that. However, I'm more of an illustrator. If you're looking for someone who can do both, come hit me up, essentially. Very much just like a little bit more formal than that. And I got an email back from them, and they were super excited to talk to me. And I think, you know what, actually at the same time period, I had another job offer. I had just gotten a job offer from like a really small game studio in San Jose, and they were like, we're gonna give you a job offer. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna have a job. And then this thing from Disney happened, and I was like, because it's my dream job. And so they called me, and they're like, they do the job interview, and I was like, I am so excited. I want you to know though, like I genuinely have a job offer. So like if we could speed this up, that would be great, because I would love to work with you and everything, but I do have to like let these people know. The part of my interview that they told me later was the thing that made me stand out. Well, first of all, it turned out they were looking for someone that had both skills. But secondly, they asked me why I love Disney, or like they asked me what my favorite Disney film was. And I told them that my favorite Disney film was Aladdin, because I had watched it like 100 times when I was a kid with my brother, but on a TV that didn't work. So we couldn't see the screen, and we would just listen to it with like the fuzzy image and watch one half one day during like a little lunch break, and then watch the next half the second day, because this was like for like 1 year when we were getting homeschooled. And so we'd watch the movie half one day, the second half the next day, and then start over. And I was like, and I still love that movie, even though I've seen it 100 times and it was on a blurry screen, it's still my favorite movie. And I think so the hiring manager told me, he's like, it just stood out to me like how much you really loved Disney, and that really stood out to them. And when I went in for my interviews in person and I was showed my portfolio, every single interview, every single artist pointed at the drawing I had done of the monster in the city that got immediately rejected from the earlier job job interview, and said that they loved that image. So like, we love this. This is so great. And so I was like, I really felt like I had made the right choice, even though at the time when I got rejected and I was creating it, it felt like the wrong choice because I had a feeling I might get rejected. And who's gambling with rejection when you've never gotten a job ever? But it paid off, and I was able to, and then I ended up getting this job at Disney Interactive. It was like within a couple of days, they like got back to me and got me the offer. It's still one of the most favorite things that I've ever done, is work for Disney Interactive and make the games, and because I got to draw like Disney princesses all day. I did some character design, I did some animation, I did some storyboarding, I did some backgrounds, I did game art, I did icons. Like it was like a little just taste of everything, and it was so fun. And every single person that I worked with loved what they were doing, and loved Disney and they were just so excited about what we were doing that like that energy, you just feed off of it from the other people on your team. And so it just made every day was like I was excited to go to work. And eventually that game studio closed down and I had to move on, but it remains one of the best memories I've had. And so I think we're gonna end off the video here so I can do a part 2, and I'll talk about how I transitioned from working like full-time studio jobs to becoming a fully independent artist, because it's a very different track. I think I'll just summarize with just some overall things that I feel like I learned that I would share, which is the importance of like learning your fundamentals, like really learn your fundamentals as an artist. And then once you have that, then worry about things like style. But I feel like one of the things that helped me the most was that I was so focused on what kind of art I wanted to make. And I don't mean style-wise, I mean I wanted to work in films or games, and that art looks very different than gallery, and it looks very different than children's books. And so because I had that focus, I would think it was easier for me to get to my target, or instead of like being splattered about. And even though I worked in games for a few years, and then I transitioned and I did children's illustration, and then now I'm doing like how to draw tutorial books and stuff like that. You can change your mind later on in your career. I obviously have, but having that original goal and target, so you can actually just get started, get working, get some experience, and then transition as you need to, I think was one of the best ways that one of the main reasons I was able to make it. And the second thing that I feel like is the reason I made it is I truly believe that the key to becoming an artist, like as a career, is about persistence and not about talent. Because the people that I have seen who made it in the industry and who got jobs weren't necessarily the most talented, but were the ones who were extremely persistent, who showed up every day, who did every single assignment, who did the extra credit, who did the extra classes, who even after they didn't get a job went in and became like a PA, so at least they're in the same office, and did the extra educational learning, and they just kept it going. And even though they were at the bottom, they made their way up. And it is not an easy path. But if it's like the thing that you need, like for me, I can't imagine a life where I'm not creating art, because I've tried it a few times and it just feels soulless and sad. Like I generally feel like I'm wilting, like a plant that's wilting when I'm not creating art. So I felt like I needed to do this to survive in life. And so I was able to persist through it. But I know some people, it's because they feel like they can't do anything else. Like they're like, I suck at everything else, so I'm gonna do art, which is fine. Then it becomes your drive. But yeah, so just if you're feeling frustrated, like you're not very good, it's okay. We are never good when we start. It's more about just keeping with it and keeping your goal in mind and just constantly going and not getting distracted from that. So, okay, I hope this was inspirational, and I'll work on doing part 2 for you guys. Bye.